Welcome once again to the 10 in a row Celtic Show. My name is Graham Wilson, and joining me, as always, it's the green and white writer, Mr. Paul Larkin. Hail, hail, Paul.
Hello, dummy.
It's so good to see you once again, or speak with you, I guess. And we're bringing back a very popular format from last summer. It's the 10 in a row Celtic podcast format. Paul, let's tell our listeners a little bit about how it's set up. We will have 10 topics that we will debate, and we will have a 5-minute span to debate these topics. And then, at the end of the 5 minutes, we hear this. So there's your warning. We had a lot of feedback last year about the fact that I heard it described as a klaxon. What is a klaxon?
That is something that your continental football fans used to have. It was, like the... sort of like I was suppose in America you describe it like as a car horn.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that it has the desired effect. We're cutting off the allotted.
It shuts you up.
It does, absolutely. And in the process, as everybody knows, Paul rips the piss out of me. It's all good fun, and we are just giving everybody something, something to pay attention to and be entertained by throughout the summer months. So we're going to cover all of the latest goings on with Celtic Football Club. I don't know exactly what we could possibly be talking about, but we'll also be covering issues with the World Cup. Obviously, this being a World Cup event summer, that's going to be a huge topic for our coverage. And we might have some topics that may be focusing in on you, the listener. You never quite know, do you, Paul?
Yes.
Fantastic. So without further ado, let's go for 10 in a row. First off, and first topic, starting now. Roy Keane has been rumored to be Neil Lennon's replacement now that obviously Neil Lennon has resigned. Paul, your thoughts on Roy Keane as a potential replacement, a potential Celtic manager?
Well, Graham, I think it's a gigantic job of a gigantic club, and it needs a gigantic character, and Roy Keane is certainly that. I know there's been a lot of chit-chat on Twitter regarding his managerial experience, which I know some of it's not been great, but although I think Sunderland seems to have been written off in that respect, people actually forget that Sunderland had the worst start ever to a season, and Roy Keane came in and got them promoted by winning the league in the same year. So that's something that's got to look at. Clearly, Roy Keane ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people. As a leader, there's none better. At the end of the day, I don't think we were going to attract top quality, Graham. But literally, I think that this is a Dermot Desmond appointment. He runs the club, and I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I have some trepidation, I'll be honest with you. I mean, first off, like you said, and like you pointed out, his CV is, aside from his playing career, which, is really unquestioned. I mean, he was world class in his day. I mean, he was the quintessential central midfield enforcer, especially at the beginning part of this century, and certainly the late 90s, if you will. But his managerial career didn't quite followed that same trajectory, and it was far from smooth, from a lot of perspectives. I mean, Sunderland, y'all said the example to point at with his time at Ipswich, make sure that you turn your phone off. I mean, Neil Lennon obviously was certainly welcoming of phones going off during press conferences, played along with it. Roy Keane, I can assure you, is not going to be the same. He will make you eat your phone. One player that is currently with the Celtic side, who I'm sure is absolutely bricking it, is Anthony Stokes. Anthony Stokes being at Sunderland while Roy Keane was the manager at that point. A lot of stories have come out, in terms of what that time was like. I mean, he's a manager that manages by fear. I think that, obviously his... we have some feedback actually from Dwight York, who was with Sunderland at the time, and certainly didn't end, quite well between himself and Roy Keane. So
yeah, well, look, I mean, I'm not going to take Dwight York's opinion, quite frankly, because Dwight York was a player who Roy Keane described as when Man United won a European Cup in 1999, who said, "If I never win another game of football, I'll be happy." So that's Dwight York for you. So yeah, I mean, look. Every person's got the flaws. I mean, we seem to be in a world where everybody who's coming to Celtic gets absolutely slaughtered before they actually even set foot in the park. And, I'm not really going to go into that kind of stuff because, I didn't think prejudging anybody is a good thing to do. mean, the one thing I tell you, Roy Keane will guarantee is, I mean, if Roy Keane rules by fear, then so be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually thought when you said players that be scared, I thought it'd be Charlie Mulgrew, because this could be the first time Charlie's been dropped in about 4 years.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, Roy Keane is not going to be. When we think about Neil Lennon and when he stepped in, I mean, he was almost the anti-Mowbray in a lot of ways. I think that in a lot of ways, here again, Roy Keane is the anti-Lennon. We're not going to have the favorites being played every week, maybe out of position, so on and so forth. If you're not putting in a full shift under a Roy Keane regime, he's yanking you and quick. He doesn't play favorites. Yeah,
Graham. To me, the key element of the Roy Keane appointment is going to be who comes with him. That's going to be the absolute key, because Roy Keane is a man who will inspire people. He's got an aura, and if you can't be motivated by Roy Keane standing in a dugout, there's not many people you can be motivated by.
True.
What he's going to need is his coaches, good coaches. I don't know who they're going to be. There's obviously not that much kind of people. But what I will say is there's a lot of guys he played with at Man United who are currently looking for jobs.
True.
And, I wouldn't be adverse to somebody throwing in somebody like a Paul Scholes for his first job.
Oof.
Because there's another guy who could inspire people. You've also got people like Mike Phelan, Rennie Mullenstein, guys like that. I mean, these are the guys that would come and work for Roy Keane. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is the kind of level. This is as high calibre an appointment you could get in terms of the global reach of Roy Keane, because Roy Keane's a world name in football.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. And what I will temper it with is, I know that his appearances on television still have this kind of fierce, snarling, take no nonsense kind of guy. But what's been evident from Ireland's training things and stuff like that has been, they say that Keane's mellowed and has actually made an impact on their training. And let's not forget that Anthony Stokes was part of that training, and there's been no problem with him and Keane. So,
true.
And
Great
let's
point.
not forget the fact that Keane slaughtered Mick McCarthy, slaughtered Niall Quinn, and ended up working for Niall Quinn and making up with Mick McCarthy.
Yeah, no question. And, I think that...
Nobody knows what the future holds.
Yep, thank you, Paulie.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of elements. You talk about the sort of groundswell of criticism before somebody even steps foot on the park. I mean, I think that, granted, if you did look at Roy Keane's managerial CV, there's a lot to be desired there. But, I think it's the type of situation where, what I'm going to be curious about is how much he has evolved and what you've just referred to in terms of his mellowing. And, I mean, listen, you can't work side by side with Martin O'Neill for, the better part of 18 months or however long he's been with the Republic of Ireland setup and not learn something. I'm sure that there's been a lot of tutelage.
Well, yeah, exactly. And when 2010, when Neil Lennon came and I looked at his managerial CV and, wait a minute, he didn't have one.
Right.
So, let's know, there's plenty of guys that have done that, and let's give the guy a chance with Celtic, you know what I mean? And that's what we're all about.
Klaxon. Next topic. Neil Lennon. Obviously, we're at the end of the time that Neil Lennon was in charge at Celtic. What are your thoughts in terms of when you look back at the Neil Lennon era? How are you going to view it? And then I also want to get your opinion on the reasons. Let's speculate. I mean, why did Neil Lennon pick now as his time to leave?
Well, to come on to that first, Graham, I mean, look, clearly he caught everybody by surprise with the resignation announcement. None more so than Peter Lawwell and the Celtic board, by all accounts.
Yeah.
And there appeared to be a kind of bit to and fro after that. I mean, look, we can speculate. There's been bits and bobs. I know Matt McGlone done a good blog, and Matt's quite close to Neil Lennon, and Neil Lennon was clearly frustrated by the interference of Peter Lawwell, the foisting players, and so on and so forth. I do think that 4 years is a pretty long time for a Celtic manager in terms of shelf life these days. I also think that perhaps he felt that his stock probably couldn't get any higher as Celtic manager, therefore he might be in the frame for jobs in the Premiership that come up. I know he's been linked with Southampton, he'd previously been linked with Norwich and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So we can go on all day about the reasons for it, and clearly what we didn't want it to happen is there have been an environment which ended up forcing Neil Lennon at the job, because that's no what happened in terms of the Neil Lennon era. Then I think it's been pretty much successful. I mean, let's not forget where we were.
Yeah.
We took after a 4-0 defeat at St Mirren, which was just as bad as it gets. Mm-hmm. He then pushed Walter Myth's cheating team to the brink almost. And then, of course, we won 3 leagues and beat Barcelona. Mm-hmm. Now, people can use that Barcelona and say, that was a one-off, etc. There's 2 things I want to say about that. First of all, the year before we got thrashed 4-0 in Utrecht. So, that's the kind of... I was 2 years before that. So that was the kind of stand we were at. Second of all, the best performance was not actually in Celtic Park that night. The best performance was in the new camp 2 weeks before.
Agreed.
When Barcelona were absolutely invincible at the time and we almost took a draw.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a fourth win. So there was definite progression there. More importantly for Neil Lennon, he gave us back our pride.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
He put the chest out there and he said, look, we're Celtic, you know, we are a force. You come to Celtic Park, we'll go toe-to-toe with you and we'll give a game to everybody. And, you know, I thank him for everything he'd done for Celtic. A 13-year career, and he was a thorn in the side of Rangers throughout it.
Yeah, no question about it. You know, I can't help but feel anything but pride and happiness looking back on the time that Neil Lennon came in. I mean, you know, obviously you can judge Neil Lennon at this point in terms of, you know, the cups that got away. And I think that that's a quick reaction from many people who, you know, have been sort of hankering for him to go. And my whole comment on that was, who are you going to replace him with? You know, and I think that we're in that sort of situation now where it's, where do we go from here? And that says a lot, I think, about Neil Lennon's time in charge, you know, and I think that not enough of the evaluation of his time comes from where he took us from, where we were when he first started, and the progression and the trajectory that he brought on. I wish him nothing but the best. And, you know, obviously you can point out the fact that he did have his favorites at times, but the magic really came back into Celtic. I mean, you know, the Green Brigade getting behind the club, and, you know, the accomplishments that we had. I just hope that, you know, this isn't the sort of apex of the hill, if you will. I mean, you know, we're talking about the reasons why Neil Lennon may have left, and you know, you can't help but think that maybe he feels as though this is as far as he can take this team with the resources that he's been given, and that's troubling to me.
Yeah, look, Celtic fans, we all need a leader to get behind, and that leader has to be kind of one of us. And I think that's something that, had we, you know, and with all due respect, that's no Oscar Garcia, you know, or someone of that ilk. They might be good coaches and that kind of thing. But Jan Beniguri Hesselink made a fantastic quote where he said, "Celtic's a place that comes with a handbook," and that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Paul Le Guen had a great reputation before he went to Rangers, and he just got sucked up by the whole thing because he wanted time, this, that, next thing. And you know as well as I do that you didn't get time in these kind of jobs. And similarly, being actually knowing Celtic and knowing the club and knowing the fans is part of a kind of remit of sort of getting the job, I think. And so that's why I think that, you know, people who had criticised Neil Lennon would have probably said 6 months ago, oh God, you wouldn't get this under Lenny. But you might not get that with Roy Keane, because, you know, one thing you can guarantee with Roy Keane is you know, will to win. And that's kind of what we're looking for. I mean, at the end of the day, Celtic, I mean, you know, I think there's been this, I've read quite a lot of stuff, Graham, I don't know if you've read it yourself, about people saying how much money we get to spend and this and that. I didn't think we need a lot of money to spend. We've got an actual pretty good team sitting there right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's an expansive team that's young and it's fit and all the rest of it. You'd like to think that we're going to get rid of 2 or 3 players, because I quite frankly can't see Roy Keane tolerating the likes of Dirk Borictor.
No.
Slacking about.
Although that is funny that is funny to think about.
Yeah, and somebody said to me the day, like Derek Adams, the Ross County manager, doesn't drink or anything like that, and he says apparently offers everybody an iron brew when they go to Ross County. He says, I just can't wait for him to offer Roy Keane an iron brew. You know what I mean? So yeah. I mean, it's Lenny. We love him. You know, everybody had their flaws, but, you know, for what he put up with to be Celtic manager, for what he gave us, some of the most memorable nights ever, then we can go with our blessing. You know.
Well said. Next topic, Director of Football. This is a topic that's come up quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, and whether or not this is even feasible, or whether or not it's even actually already been taking place for some years. Now, you had a blog yourself earlier this week where you talked about a wee man from your house as maybe a potential outlet for this. A Director of Football, good or bad thing, and is it even feasible?
Well, look, you know, a director of football is a wee bit like an STD in Scotland. It's a wee bit like an STD in a strip club. You just didn't want to hear it. But well, actually, the first thing is that, you know, Hearts are going down that road, right? Yeah. And the reason that Hearts are going down that road is very simple: is they never want to be in a position where they have to sack a manager and then the whole backroom staff goes as well. So not only do you have to pay all them off, but then you've got to pay new ones to come in.
Sure.
So that's the first thing. Second of all, there's one club in Scotland that's actually works really well at, which is Falkirk. Alex Smith, you know, directed of football, and they've had various managers there, Presley, Holt, Stevie Crawford's went to Hearts, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
We clearly have been tarred with it because we had Kenny Dalglish and John Barnes, right? And that was a whole scenario where it was that Barnesy fails, Kenny will come in and save us. Well, that never happened, so that was it. when Martin O'Neill came in, I know for a cast iron fact that Desmond said to him, would you want to keep Ken Dalglish on as a director of football? And Martin said, I'm not even going to dignify that with an answer.
Yeah. Because
obviously that's Martin's club and he runs it and so on and so forth.
Right.
But with that being said, Graham, I think that's a road that we should be going down, and I think Gordon Strachan would be the ideal man for the job, and I'll tell you why. Because Gordon Strachan is all about coaching, right? He can't stand talking to the media. He can't be bothered with all the kind of phone-ins and blah, blah, blah and all that kind of thing. What he absolutely loves is coaching, right? Yep. Making players better and making coaches better. And if you put Strachan in there, because let's face it, he's in a part-time job right now with Scotland. He's got a very good salary there, close to £500,000 a year. But if you put him in and say, right, Gordon, we're looking to build a structure here that produces great players and great coaches, so that every so often we have the conveyor belt come in with the next managers 2 or 3 years down the line. And you're promoting it within the Celtic way. Because one thing we can say for certain, Graham, is like when Strachan came in, he faced a lot of the same stuff that Roy Keane's currently facing with the fans or that. Although, quite frankly, I'm sure Roy Keane's no bother two fucks about it. But what I will say is, Strachan might not have come in as a Celtic man, but he definitely left the club as a Celtic man.
Sure.
And he just loves, I mean, you just look at the impact he's had with the Scottish national team. Now, of course, it means nothing if they get beaten the first 3 games that actually mean anything in the European Championships. Mm-hmm. But this is a guy who understands football.
Yeah, it does.
And he loves nothing more than getting himself dirty on the training pitch. And that's the kind of director of football I want to see. I certainly didn't want to see the director of football that we see rumoured about Peter Lawwell, or indeed the ones that you see at places like QPR and these nutcases who's hire and fire managers, at will.
Right.
So, what I want to see is that, with the current fiasco going on across the city, we have a chance to put in a structure that could just produce for decades.
Yeah, no question. And the shame of it is, from my perspective, is that it's just unfortunate that we couldn't have Gordon Strachan be the director of football while Neil Lennon was still here. And I think that that would have brought so much value, and it would have you can definitely see how Gordon Strachan was going to defend Neil Lennon and what he was trying to do to the higher ups. I mean, there was never going to be a situation where Peter Lawwell was just going to take a player on loan to do a favor for somebody's agent or whatever. Gordon Strachan wouldn't stand for that, and so it would be a bit of a buffer and a bit of it would be so much of a help to Neil Lennon in so many different ways. It's hard to imagine Gordon Strachan being the director of football alongside of a personality that's as strong as Roy Keane. I think that, what I would imagine is Roy Keane is probably going to have some concessions if he is named the manager, where, he's going to have a bit more of a free reign, where he's not going to have to report to a Peter Lawwell. At least I hope that wouldn't be the sort of situation. But, getting back to sort of, would it be feasible or how applicable is it? I mean, I think that it's probably the worst kept secret that Peter Lawwell has had more of a say in the personnel decisions than many of us are comfortable with, and Neil Lennon really hasn't had an equal seat at the table, and that's really the thing that I'm not in favor of. Having complete control for the coach, to make all of the decisions, but I'm also not in favor of a business person making all those decisions. I think everybody needs to have an equal seat at the table and come to some form of consensus.
Yeah, because I think that the guys, the managers who have ran their football club from top to bottom are the successful ones. That's where the successful goes. Now I know that basically all clubs now, the owners and chief executives and chairmen have huge input into teams and all that kind of thing and so on and so forth. And anybody who doesn't think that goes on is just deluding themselves. At every club, you know what I mean? But I would think, and I've kind of heard whispers that one of the stipulations of Roy Keane coming to Celtic is that he runs the football department, very much like Martin O'Neill did. And I tell you, people who work with Martin O'Neill, employees and that, said there was none better, because he kept on top of everything, and then that was kind of where it was. Yeah. Whereas they flipped that on its head with Strachan, and Strachan was basically just a coach.
Right.
Now, as I say, I'm not asking for Strachan to be put in the front line or anything like that. He'd be in the background just advising. But let's not forget as well, it was, after a conversation with Gordon Strachan, that Neil Lennon decided to play Samaras up front on his own at Ibrox that time, and he gets the 2 goals.
That's a good point.
And I'm sure at some point there was a lot of phone calls going on between Lennon and Strachan at that point, and Strachan probably thought, hold on a minute, how long am I going to do this for free, so that's that. But certainly, it's interesting times. I think it wouldn't it be adverse to being a director of football going in there, and certainly I think as well, touching on the director of football and the coaches, that's going to be the key to this whole thing. This whole structure is going to be who comes in, whether it's above Roy Keane or below Roy Keane or at the same level as Roy Keane.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. Next topic, we're going to turn our attention towards the World Cup now, and teams to look out for. I'll take this first, and then I want to hear your thoughts, Paul.
Yeah.
Teams, the team that I'm most interested in, they're going to be playing tonight in a friendly against Egypt, and of course I'm talking about Chile. Everybody's been talking about the Brazilian side, Argentina, obviously playing on their home continent. Leo Messi has a point to prove. I mean, that's the perennial question for him. I think that a lot of people are looking past a very physical France side that is they're no mugs, and I think that a lot of people sort of put them off, especially given their record in this past Euros as well as the last World Cup. But you can't overlook them. But Chile, obviously they're coming off of a World Cup in 2010 where they surprised so many people and delighted so many people. I mean, the way that they played, it was such a joy to watch. Bielsa's 3-3-1-3. I mean, a lot of people refer to it as a 3-4-3, but we know better. Obviously, you have the three midfielders and two dynamic players, Arturo Vidal, which Celtic supporters are going to be familiar with from Juventus, as well as another player that Celtic supporters are going to be familiar with, Alexis Sanchez. And they play that sort of roaming role in between the attacking three and the midfield, and they press so high up. I mean, it's got to be an absolute nightmare. The matchup that I want to see is Chile against Italy. I mean, Italy, they love a slow build-up. Obviously, it's going to be a bit more defensive, but it would be such a nightmare for a side like that to go up against Chile. And it's going to be the type of thing where Chile is either going to win a game or they're going to lose a game big time, because some of the attacking that they present is almost suicidal. I mean, if you go up against a team that's going to catch them on the break, I mean, it's just like you're just standing on the couch yelling, "Get back!" But that's the position that they put themselves in. It's so exciting, and they're definitely my dark horse. I'm looking forward to watching them, and I expect big things.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on Chile, I hear you on France as well. Something I've got to mention, I think France will probably be one of the top European teams here. I really do believe that. Pretty reasonable group, and some quality players who are kind of sniffling about under the radar right now. So
absolutely,
certainly know they're no living off the name. I've got a kind of funny feeling Spain might be like the France team that ended up in 2002 this time. You know what I mean? I think that they're not quite what they were.
Yeah.
One team I'll say right now, and this will probably shock you, and I'll probably get a ton of abuse for this, is England. And let me explain my reasons for this, right? First of all, let me throw in the caveat of, they have to get out the group, and that's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
You could easily be out after two games, and I'm sure that's what Hodgson, the game tonight against Peru, very, very kind of conservative kind of formation.
Agreed.
He is looking at probably two draws and trying to beat Costa Rica. So that's the thing. Now, there's four reasons why I think England could possibly do better than they normally, because this is probably the first World Cup of my lifetime where England aren't going in with this huge expectation where it's just a case of turning up and picking up the trophy.
That is odd. Yeah.
First of all, I think the manager knows what he's doing. And not in the sense that he's any top manager, but he's certainly somebody who players really respect. Chris Sutton said he was a fantastic manager who done game situations at training before anybody else was doing that. And I think he knows the limitations of the squad, and I think he plays on that quite well. Secondly, is they're going to have Wayne Rooney fit, going into a major tournament for the first time in 10 years.
And he seems motivated.
Yeah, and he's been on his own training thing, and he kind of understands it. Thirdly, they've got pace, and pace is absolutely everything in football these days, and they have got an abundance of pace. And fourthly, they've got legs. They've got a lot of young players down there. We know the climate down there is going to be an absolute drainer for European teams and all that kind of thing.
Sure.
And so my caveat is that they have to get through the group, obviously, and that's not going to be easy. But if they do, they might just find their same, because I tell you, they've got a couple of starlets in there, Sterling and Barkley, who I think are as good as any young players in Europe right now. They are so fantastic. The problems that England are going to have is clearly the two centre-halves, Jagielka and Cahill, aren't that great.
No.
They're no bad, but they're not that great. And they also have Baines and Johnson, who like to go forward and aren't that good defensively. So apart from that, I'm not expecting a lot for Germany this year.
Really?
Just didn't really think they might. I mean, they might shock me that. But the team that interests me the most, Graham, because obviously you've got Argentina, and Argentina is a funny one because they've got a pretty straightforward group and all that kind of thing, right? But the team that interests me most here is Brazil. Because Brazil last year, if you remember, the Confederations Cup, everybody wrote them off and then he started playing.
It's true, yeah.
And then Neymar had a goal oh, this guy's hopeless. What Barcelona played this all money for, and then he had an absolute screamer within 5 minutes of the first game.
Yeah.
And they basically cantered through that tournament. Let me just also throw in the caveat that just before that tournament, England got a fighting 2-2 draw in there. But they just got better and better as the tournament went on. And, but the other thing that you touched on there was Italy. Italy done really well in that tournament, and were just ran out of legs by the end of it.
And that's the thing too; they have the depth. I don't think Italy has the depth, and that's I think is going to be, no pun intended, their Achilles heel. And I think that getting back to your England point, I think that suits England as well, because Italy have a history of starting off World Cup finals slowly, and if England can go in there and get any sort of result, that's definitely going to build their momentum, and they're gonna pick their tails up, and anything can happen at that point, but.
Look, listen, if England, I'm talking about this low expectation. If England beat Italy in the first game, the next day and day, people will just be like, give us a trophy now,
It's so true.
And of course, the one team I'm looking with a lot of interest in, Graham, not actually on their games, is actually on Twitter when they're playing, is the USA, Graham.
Oh, good Lord.
Because I'm expecting you to kind of spontaneously combust.
I very well may. I don't think they're even going to win a game, to be honest. I have a lot of criticism of Jurgen Klinsmann. Listen, Portugal is really going to be sort of the Achilles heel. I think that they did get a tough group. I'm not sure it's the group of death. I mean, Ghana are no mugs, clearly. And Germany, I think, are definitely. I see Germany in the final. I can't read too much into it, in addition to how much talent they have and how much quality they have. And I just... there's not enough metaphysical sort of counterweight to that. They're due, and I think they may not win it, but they're going to be in the final, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Next topic: punditry for the World Cup. Obviously, always a hot sort of. You speak of Twitter, and you speak of our reactions on Twitter, and that certainly gets the response out of the masses. Your thoughts from your side of the pond?
Well, let me first say, I think Twitter has made pundits better. Because there's a lot of great pundits on Twitter. There's a lot of complete and utter shite on Twitter as well, but there's a lot of great pundits on Twitter. And I think that the big companies, BBC and Sky, they've realised that, and they've kind of upped their game with their pundits. And now people are saying, Gary Neville's good, and Jamie Carragher, and all that kind of thing. Unfortunately, for every Gary Neville, there's a Robbie Savage, who's like, our version of Warren Barton, basically.
Right.
And obviously, it looks like ITV will be losing their best pundit, and Roy, of course. But, I think it's interesting because in this country, we had the old guard, which was basically Alan Hansen and Mark Lawrenson, right? Now, they were two clearly top quality football players. I mean, people slag Mark Lawrenson all the time because he's got a high-pitched voice and blah, blah, blah. But I tell you, Mark Lawrenson, one of the best football players I've ever seen in my life, as a centre-half. I remember seeing him playing for Republic of Ireland against Scotland. Scored the winner at Hampden, and he was absolutely top-notch. But they're kind of living in the 80s, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of, the football was completely different and that kind of thing. And so they're kind of being superseded. Now, there's some people who kind of drop to the net like Danny Murphy, who's just no got a personality whatsoever, and yet just sits here morose and all. And then you've got Alan Shearer, who clearly doesn't understand football, and who constantly says that he stands behind his record as Newcastle manager, which was play date, low 7.
Yeah.
So, there's that kind of thing. But I do think that this is something that in the past has drove people insane with a level of bias and all that kind of thing. I think punditry is getting better. A few idiots do slip through the net every so often. I can't stand Andy Townsend, who is another dinosaur for the past and that kind of thing. But when you've got guys at different levels, like Martin Keown, I think is fantastic, gives you a lesson in defending, Kevin Kilban, people like that. But of course, at the end of the day, people might be listening to this saying, that's what shite, I can't stand them all, or I like him, or whatever. That's what it's all about. But certainly, Graham, and I'm sure it's the same in America, people are watching this stuff more and more now for pundits as well.
No question. Yeah, and I like you say, in America, it does tend to have a bit of a different relationship because you have varying degrees of sophistication with the game and varying degrees of exposure to the game and expectations as such. You have people who are accustomed to watching the Premiership and the English or British announcers that come with it and their colloquialisms, or you have different sects that are used to listening to La Liga, and you have a different sort of style with that, and then you have the American pundits, right, and the American commentators who are absolutely awful. I mean, you can basically break them down into commentators that are coming from other sports and are trying to, sort of interject their enthusiasm and their sort of way of calling a game, which is absolutely atrocious in my opinion, onto the game of football. And the game of football, as we know, it needs to breathe. You can't, so many American sports, the challenge is to just fill all dead air with just some sort of chatter, and it's all nonsense. It's just absolutely irritating. You just want a bit of space to just relax. And these announcers from other sports just don't seem to have the ability to do that. But when you have, I think that some of the former players can be quite good. One player in mind is Taylor Twellman, who is an MLS player that has played. He played with the New England Revolution, scored loads of goals. He was a striker, and I think when he first started out, he was just as bad as anybody else. But as he developed and as his career sort of took off, he improved. You could tell that he was examining tape, he was taking feedback, and he was really interested in improving and not leaning on sort of his record as a player, and that should be good enough, and I'm just turning up to collect a check. One thing from the American broadcasting of the World Cup that I cannot wait for, and this was present with the Euros in 2012, is the dynamic between Michael Ballack and Alexi Lalas, because Alexi Lalas is probably one of the least intelligent people to talk about this sport on the face of the planet. And Michael Ballack just sits there and with that German, just sort of stoic stare, and he looks at him and he's like, it's almost like he's thinking to himself, like, okay, just whenever you're finished. And then he looks like he just wants to smack him, and he just has the best comebacks and one-liners. That's something that you want to see real time, is accountability. Like, you're talking a lot of pish, and this person's going to tell you right now.
Yeah, over here, one of the flaws they have over here is the fact that, we have too many players who just speak in these stupid words to describe situations all the time. Some players in this country, they're never disappointed, they're always gutted. It's never a big game, it's massive, and it's just like, shut the fuck up. And I'm the last person, neither of you, to ever defend Graham Souness, but you had Robbie Savage, who just kind of basically sounds like Alexi Lalas, looks like Alexi Lalas, actually saying once when Souness criticised him that what's he ever won in football? And you're thinking, this is Robbie Savage, who's pissed about Leicester and Derby against Graham Souness, who played for Liverpool, won the European Cup twice, and it's just that kind of level, sort of. Unfortunately, because one of the great things is that we didn't have to put up with the piss that we get on Sports Scene, but I tell you, unfortunately, we seem to have Pat Niven, who just appears everywhere and talks the biggest load of shit I've ever heard any commentator talk in my entire life. Yeah. And hopefully he's as far away from our screens as possible. But certainly, I do think it's a huge aspect of the game, and I think that it's been encouraged when you have people like Gary Neville and Paul Scholes again, who actually tell you how it is, and these guys are winners at the top level of the game, who know how to win big trophies and big games, and that's the kind of stuff I want to hear.
Yeah, no question about it. A lot of it is going to come down to, the storylines that develop out of the World Cup, and you tend to find in each of these tournaments that certain announcers just pick up on certain themes, and they really come out. That's something that I'm interested to see. One thing I think everybody can agree on, it's not going to be Alexi Lalas. Next topic, match fixing. A lot of buzz coming out, obviously, this past week with Scotland playing against Nigeria, and the allegations, and you can watch the video on playback and make your own assertions. I think most people have. How prevalent is it, and what effect is it going to have on this World Cup?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. The goalie, if he was the guilty, then nobody was, But second of all, there always seems to be a perception in Scotland that it could never happen here, and yet the fact that somebody actually got found guilty for doing it for over 10 years, and people still say, oh no, it could never happen here.
Exactly.
It's absolutely rife in the lower leagues of Scottish football. And, people like Kevin Kelly have come out and told about bets and told about how his mate told him that he was betting on a team in the Scottish Cup to win 9-0. And he says, what are you doing, that stupid bet? And they did win 9-0. I myself was told about 4 years ago once of a game involving two lower league teams in Scotland where the result would be 5-3 to the away team, and it was. And of course I never bet it because you're thinking, can it be true? But so in terms of it, look, there is so much money in football now, and there is so much at stake that you've got to reckon and look at it as corrupt. Do you know what I mean? We had the whole scandal in Italy that kind of had all their top clubs basically demoted and all that kind of thing. We had a scandal with Crystal Palace a few years ago where Chinese syndicates had worked out that a score stands after 60 minutes, and so they organise for the floodlights to get knocked out, and the games gets abandoned, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have various things that have happened recently, including the Nigeria-Scotland game. And I'm sure when you've got an organisation as corrupt, and we're a country that's known for so much cheating as Scotland is, then Nigeria probably didn't want to get dragged into it. But what I will say is that you would kind of hope that because the top players get paid so much money, then there is really nothing to be gained from them throwing a game or whatever it might be, or no trying or anything like that. But I'll tell you, there is so much corruption at the qualifying rounds in the Champions League and so on, where teams who come out of nowhere are getting unbelievable results. And it's funny because this happened with a team called the Brecon in Hungary, and they were getting beat, and suddenly it was like, and yet one of the results, and the media never picked up on this, was the standout results was when Hibs lost 7-0 to Malmo.
Yeah. Because
if you'd seen that, wait a minute, what's that? Because Malmo was a team, they beat Hibs 2-0 at home. The round before, they scraped past Drogheda in the Irish League, and suddenly they go to win 7-0. Now, clearly you can say, Hibs are crap, this, that, and next thing. But these are the kind of results that always seem to happen in these kind of things. And similarly, you just wonder about certain teams that are going to the World Cup who maybe didn't have top quality players and star players, thinking, I could make myself an absolute fortune here.
Yeah.
I mean, similarly, just on a grand scale, and I don't know if we call match fixing or cheating or whatever, but let's not forget how the Roy Keane story started. Big bets were put on different bookies around Britain and Ireland.
Well, you can always track, the sort of latest rumors based on that, based on the trajectory of the bets. Yeah,
and I've got a bit of my being in bonnet because I'm always thinking with the bookies, anytime anybody has a good win, they're always complaining about it,
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met a poor bookie in my life, but you've got Dermot Desmond, JP McManus, John Magnier. I mean, these are guys that have made fortunes out of gambling. There was a story on the telly 2 years ago, whatever, about a bookie at a racecourse, and Dermot Desmond took the guy's entire living in one bet. He just walked up to him with a minute to go before the race. He put £600,000 on a horse.
Yeah,
completely legal. No saying it's fixed, nothing like that. So that's the kind of stakes these people are going in. So I don't know. I mean, I know there's been kind of similar things happened in America with the mafia and stuff like that with college basketball, Graham. But I mean, is this something that's been, do you have to go back to the Chicago White Sox, or have there been any other occasions?
Well, no, not at all. And you don't even need to go outside of the game of football. I mean, several years ago, the United States played a friendly against El Salvador, and there were confirmed reports of match fixing amongst the El Salvador team. And they went and they interviewed them, and they said, why wouldn't you not try your best going up against the United States? I mean, obviously, during this time period, the United States is not well thought of. If they wound up beating the United States team, they'd return home as heroes, and they don't give a fuck. I mean, the bottom line is they are so poor. In spite of the fact that they're many times professional football players, obviously coming from El Salvador, it's a bit of a lower sort of visibility, but nonetheless, you're representing your country. Why wouldn't you take pride in that? And the fact of the matter is, they come from such poor environments that the amount of money that's being thrown at them is just too good to pass up. The other interesting element here, listening to Declan Hill, who's sort of the preeminent expert on this, he's written several books on the subject. He talks about the interesting dynamic where there's so much education going on right now with younger players, and the fact of the matter is, when you study it, it's not the younger players that are engaging in much of this match fixing. It's all the older players. Statistically, players who are in their late 20s or early 30s are far more likely and far more prevalent to be commonly found guilty of it than the younger players. So it's interesting to sort of study, who is it that's prone to be engaging in this and why?
Well, I mean, look, the bottom line is, this isn't even a recent thing. I mean, you take you back to the 1982 World Cup, where probably the most thrown game in World Cup history. West Germany won, Austria 0. Yeah. When that result got both teams through, so West Germany scored after 50 minutes, and literally both teams just passed the ball amongst each other for the rest of the game, knocking Algeria out. And Algeria never ever forgot that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that was, so clearly conversations took place before that game, where West Germany kind of says to little brother, right, boom, we need a result. This is a result, right, fine. And it's scandalous, and you didn't want to see it because really there is nothing worse than football. You know what I mean? But there's been, I've always said I've asked players in the past, have you been involved in games or been fixed? And they've always said no. Have you ever been asked? No. And then it's like, have you ever been involved in a game where you haven't tried? Yes. Mm-hmm. And every one of them said yes. And they said there's easy ways to disguise it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's probably never for financial gain. That's the thing. It's probably always because we can't stand the manager. I was actually talking to somebody, a player a couple of weeks ago about it, who was at one club, a mid-table Premier League club, and they got a new manager, and after a long and still is in the game, and they said the players knew after 2-3 weeks that this guy didn't know what he was doing, and so they basically just stopped trying until he got sacked. And you kind of look at that and you think, Christ Almighty, but then they're just like, the only other option is Exodus, and they're going to all pay us out on our contracts and that. No chance.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Come on. What up?
Yeah, thank you, Paulie. Next topic, and now we're going to be focusing in
talks
on...
more sense than you.
I think most would agree. Next topic, we're going to focus on a personality within the Twitter sphere, within social media in general. And Paul, I have to ask you, give me your honest opinion. I appreciate your candor on this.
I don't know. You've piqued my interest here.
Has Paddy Brennan become an alcoholic since moving to Glasgow?
Well, I must admit, I've been monitoring young Patrick's progress over the last few months, and he's definitely, let's say, he's enjoying himself, which is always good to see.
Absolutely.
Let's just say he's wearing the designer gear now. I've seen him in a pretty green thing, which is just like, okay. But even tonight, I've seen him out and about again with the photos and all that kind of thing. And
the boy loves a selfie.
Oh, it was one that was entitled "A Scotsman, Englishman, and Irishman." Oh, sorry, a Scotsman, Welshman, and Irishman. I think it was, and so clearly his two mates were Welsh and Scottish. But yeah, I mean, it's. Paddy's a great guy, and he's a big star on Twitter and all that kind of thing. And you kind of, being old as fuck, you want to kind of look after the young ones and say, didn't go the same route as we did and fuck our whole lives up and all that kind of thing. But Paddy, if you're listening, we're here, man. We'll help. We're all friends. We're all with you.
Absolutely.
We're here for you. We're here because we love you.
It's all about the kids. I mean, as you said, we're trying to look after the young ones. And I mean, granted, Paddy's 16, 17 years old. I mean, I remember during that time I had a propensity for the alcohol. It was sort of like the social training wheels. And now, now that we're on in later years, we're drinking to forget. But that's neither here nor there. I don't think.
Yeah, because you're talking about your propensity for alcohol. I mean, every photo I seem to see you seem to be drunken. In fact, I actually saw one of you recently where it was you and Neil Lennon, and there was a lady in front of you. Was that your wife?
Yes, that was my wife. Yes.
Jesus Christ. I'm kidding.
That's called outkicking the coverage. But anyway, listen, I don't think that Paddy really became an alcoholic since he's moved to Glasgow. I think he was an alcoholic to begin with. I mean, when he was tweeting out pictures from West Belfast with, you dancer, I brought back the bottle of Buckfest and everything else. And, I even before he moved to Glasgow, all he was tweeting about was, I'm out for a few cans or, I just got the carry out and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it gets back into that sort of youthful mindset and good for him. But more importantly, my question is, why can't they turn on the heat at Paddy's work? I mean, he's tweeting out. I mean, he works for the gas company and he's sitting there and he's freezing. He sends out tweets. I mean, that's like you don't hear pimps talking about they're dying for their hole. He works for the gas company. Turn the heat on.
I've been in West Belfast many times and through the 90s and stuff and that as well. And I used to go there and drink in pubs and think, how on earth do these people fucking conduct a war? Because everybody was fucking pissed, but they done it and won it. So. Young Paddy, he's looking good, he's looking cool, but maybe just a shandy now and again.
All the best to wee Paddy. Next topic. There are no Edinburgh teams in the top flight anymore. Paul, in your opinion, which of the two teams is most likely to return to the top flight soonest?
Well, you've got to think it'd be Hearts, because at the minute right now, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Graham, I don't think it'll be the top story in the Washington Post.
Probably not.
Hibs are literally imploding right now.
Yeah.
There was a meeting today with some of their fans, which I thought was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in my life, because they built all this meeting up, and they basically had a meeting to say, we're not going to actually do anything. And it's like, all right, so you're not going to take over a club, you're not going to have anything, we're going to have a protest outside the stand. And as somebody pointed out last week, when they had a protest outside the stand, it's like, you're already inside the ground.
Yeah.
Why did you then leave to then say you were coming back in?
Yeah.
So and look, the clear difference, the problem is, Rod Petrie is the owner, Tom Farmer's man. It's as simple as that. He runs the club for him, and that's it. And he is absolutely despised by every Hibs supporter on the planet. Very, 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 very close second to that is Terry Butcher, who's equally as despised by the Hibs fans. And because Terry Butcher's a media darling, the spotlight has went off him. So right now, if people are now aware, Hibs paid off 14 players on Monday and told pretty much everybody else in the squad that either had to take half wages or piss off. So that was the first thing. Second thing, Hearts, of course, paid off a lot of players as well, most of their experienced players and that kind of thing, and currently haven't actually signed anybody because, let's not forget, they are still in administration. And therefore can't sign anybody. Now, let's not get away from the fact that if by some fuck up somewhere they actually stayed in administration, how funny would that be? And they never had any players. So clearly, look, bottom line is, Hibs are going to have to do something seismic. They've got Leanne Dempster in there now, who's coming from Motherwell, chief executive, and blah, 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 which is a bit of a change. They've got Eddie May running their youth set up. He used to stay in the same area as me, Eddie May. Kind of sold his soul to the devil and went to the Huns as their youth coach, and now he's at Hibs and all that kind of thing. And Hearts are going to... So you've got to say Hearts, because at the minute, Graham, the bottom line is the psychological impact Hearts have on Hibs now is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it is absolutely massive. The joke in Edinburgh is Hearts fans saying, last season we had a 15-point deficit, now with Hibs coming down, we've got a 12-point start. So actually, it kind of, I've no love for any of the clubs, but I tell you something, what it reminded me of when Hibs were relegated on Sunday was the fact that Hearts fans are the worst winners in the league outside the Rangers Old Co fans, because it's just the gloating and all that goes on amongst these people, because they have that sort of smug, airy self-entitlement as Huns do. And, I've seen them on Facebook and Twitter and their smug face and that kind of thing. And I would love nothing more for Hibs to get themselves sorted out over the summer and rub their fucking faces in the dirt. Yeah. Because let's not forget, Graham, this is a championship next season which is going to be better than La Liga, as called into the Scottish media.
Absolutely. I mean,
of course, and let's not forget the reason for that is because Hibs and Hearts are going to be in there. Yet the SPL was shit with the both of them in it, funnily enough.
Right.
So the first thing, and the second thing is that either Hearts, Hibs or Sevco are going to be in that league for a minimum of 2 years.
Exactly. So, I mean, they can build for the future.
Yeah. Exactly. Not one of the clubs can afford that. Hibs have got the second biggest amount of debt in Scotland, which is £8 million behind Aberdeen, which is about 16. Now, is there an argument, Graham, to extend this? The fact that Hibs have got that debt, £8 million, and they played by the rules. They go up against Hearts, who have no debt, and Sevco, who have no debt, who both cheated for years. Or they're kind of the different aspects of them, different fucking entities of them cheated for years.
Well, but is
that fair?
And the thing that's interesting to me is, as soon as Hibs go down, there's an immediate call that they're going to have to slash wages. They're going to have to cut all sorts of players, and they recognize the limitations that they're going to have. Rather than, to your point, they did everything the correct way, but when they see that they're going to be limited, they do what is expected, which is, cut the wages down to the level that they're going to be playing on, as opposed to, the Sevco at the moment, which has the second highest wage bill in Scotland, in spite of the fact that they're playing in the second division. I would love to see Hibs be able to sort of regenerate, reform, and then come back, because you're right. I mean, the only thing more irritating than a Sevco win or a Rangers Oco win is a Hearts win, and I'd love to see the Hibs to smack them back down to reality.
The other thing is, Graham, you've got to look at Rod Petrie. I mean, you've got everybody thinks about Peter Lawwell, but let's analyse Rod Petrie's record. He's now been the chief executive he's overseen 2 relegations, right? In his 15-year tenure, Hibs got £9 million into debt, which they then wiped out by selling people like Scott Brown and Kevin Thompson and Whittaker and Fletcher. Then he got them into another £9 million of debt, which he wiped out by selling the land around Easter Road to developers, and now they're in £8 million of debt.
Yeah.
I mean, how does this guy just continue to be... And he's a powerful guy in Scottish football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's scandalous, and there's absolutely no solution to anything at Easter Road until that man is removed for that football club. It's that simple.
Yeah, no question. Next topic. Which of the players from the current Celtic team are absolutely need to go in this summer? I mean, you mentioned earlier, a clean out is absolutely necessary. Which of the players need to go, and then which of the players that are rumored to be having massive transfer fees coming in for them? Which one of those players do you think? Obviously, I'm talking about Virgil and Fraser Forster. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I mean, who needs to go? I think starting right for the back, Zaluska, I think, has been there too long, and I'm never ever really comfortable with him being in goals. He has to go. Borictor certainly has to go. Baldi certainly has to go. Pukki, I just didn't think could ever last under Roy Keane time manager. He has to go. And to be honest with you, I think you could still command some decent money for them. I mean, not great, but maybe you might get $5 million for a lot of them, which is better than a kick in the arse, basically.
Sure.
Apart from that, I mean, I think, I would say, we're all trained observers of this board and the Lawwell regime. We would expect, should God forbid we not get into the Champions League, either Foster or Van Dijk to be sold. And if I was to put my house on one, it would be Foster. Because I think Foster, and it would be a huge loss there, huge loss. Yeah. Because that guy is absolutely, I mean, he's the best goalkeeper in Britain by an absolute mile. But at the end of the day, money talks and bullshit runs. And so we're kind of in that situation where I think that, I don't think Van Dijk's ready to go. I mean, he's only been there one season. He is now entering his difficult second album, right? And if that difficult second album kind of becomes a Sgt. Pepper's, then listen, you can name your price.
Absolutely, double whatever we could possibly get this summer.
Yeah, because look, bottom line is, right, there's the boy Coutinho, whatever his name is, went to Tottenham, and the first player he said, well, try to get Wanyama. How much do you think that's going to cost Tottenham? Minimum 20 million quid.
Yeah.
We've sold him for 12. We undersold him. The first game he played, I remember, forget Paul Merson saying he's a £20 million player by every step you look at it. And sometimes you've just got to be like, no, you know what? I mean, it's like, I always remember Alex Ferguson said, when they sold Ronaldo to Real Madrid, and it was him and David Gill, and David Gill says, Christ almighty, it's 80 million cash up front, that's how they got him in. And Ferguson says, we should have asked for 150.
Yeah. And
Gill was like, and he goes, I'm telling you, we would have got it.
Yeah.
And they would have got it. And so, sometimes that's how you've got to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, we all understand the model, we all understand that, but I'll tell you the reason why, in my opinion, I mean, we know the cup's been done to death. It was shit against Mont, shit against Aberdeen, it was fucking awful, I hated the both of them. But the reason why we have basically battered every single person in the league this season is because we've had a team that's been playing together now for 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
And that's absolutely crucial. It's absolutely crucial. And, we're going to see that team tested next season. But I tell you, you've got some guys in there that are in the form of their lives. Phenomenal news to get Lustig and Izagiri signed up.
Agreed. I was delighted to see that. And to your point, I mean, when you get that nucleus, when you get that team, that core of the team, especially in the spine, playing together for successive season, year after year, they almost become instinctive, where they know where each other are going to be at individual times. They can sort of alter the formation as need be, and that communication comes from the keeper, which I think that communication from the keeper and the center halves is always vital, and then especially from the manager on the touchline. It becomes so clear what their directions are coming in from the touchline, and players just naturally seem to fall into what the manager's dictating. What I was delighted to see was Stefan Johansson stepping in. Joe Ledley leaves, and Stefan Johansson he's almost an improvement over Ledley. And those types of signings and fitting players in to replace players that leave, unfortunately, we hardly ever see it in the position of striker. But Johansson himself, it's just a breath of fresh air, and that's the things those are the type of things that are going to sustain Celtic, for the next decade, the 2 decades. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, next season, my prediction is Stefan Johansson will be the breakout player. Stefan Johansson will be the guy we're all saying, right, we could easily get 10, 12, 15 million for him because he's absolutely brilliant.
He can play for anybody. He can play for any manager, any system.
He never misplaces a pass. His work ethic is absolutely phenomenal. Izagiri, I read somebody say today, well, he's never been the same since the injury. I mean, you've obviously never been in a game this season. The guy's been absolutely as good as any time in his Celtic career.
No question.
And I've said before, and I'll say again, Mikael Lustig could play for any team in Europe. He's that good.
Yep.
He has literally got every attribute you could want as a football player.
Agreed. Final topic tonight. Is Peter Lawwell's time up at Celtic? Your thoughts?
Well, it's an interesting time for Peter. I mean, clearly the Lennon thing put the spotlight on him. By all accounts, he's been kind of just eased to the side of this kind of recruitment process for a new manager. There was the thing about the TV deal, which kind of will not go away. How much did he know about the payments that were going for BT, Safeco, and so on? For the SPL to BT on behalf of Safeco and stuff like that. I mean, Peter Lawwell he's been the CEO now for 11 years, and for everybody who loves him, you'll find somebody that hates him. And he's done a lot of things that I fundamentally disagree with. Fundamentally. And I think one of the problems, Graham, is with Peter Lawwell is every time his name's mentioned, you cannot have a proper debate about him. Yeah. You just can't do it. The people are one side to the other all the time.
It's so emotional.
One of the key aspects I thought was that you'll no mention is that that company who'd done the survey that's paid Celtic were the 37th biggest brand in world football, right? Now, that really means nothing to me, and I didn't give a fuck, because Celtic were not a brand, we're a football team, you know what I mean? But I tell you, the one thing that will never get mentioned by Peter Lawwell, because he's the one that always talks about the brand, is that in that report it said that Celtic vastly undersell their sponsorship to Magners for $1.5 million a year.
Yeah.
Now, that's down to him. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and on top of that, I mean, look at the Nike deal. By all accounts, that's scandalous. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely it's malfeasance.
Yeah, well, I mean, people should know that. And when Celtic were in Philadelphia, the Celtic employee revealed that what the Nike deal actually was they gave them £10 million up front, put 2 Nike ticks on the stand, and Celtic make £2 for every strip that we sell.
That's unbelievable, considering the worldwide. You have to have an awareness of the fact that there is a worldwide support. Not just that, but how iconic that strip is. £2 for every strip that's sold. Think about the millions of Celtic strips that are sold every year. People that hate the Celtic strips buy them anyway. You know why? Because they're Celtic strips. I mean, it's criminal.
Yeah, I mean, look. So I mean, it's a funny one. I mean, I think people are kind of whetting their appetite. If Roy Keane becomes the manager, how does that dynamic with Peter Lawwell work?
They can never work together.
I don't believe John Park's going to be there come next season. And maybe it is time for a change. You know what I mean? Maybe it is. It's a difficult one because, as I said before, I mean, some people, there's some people that just despise everything about him, and there's other people who think that the sun shines out his ass. I think the truth's probably somewhere in the middle of that. You know what I mean? He's made a complete fuck up of some things, and he's done other things really well. He has added at times a wee touch of class to the club. I thought putting a wreath down at Sandy Jardin's memorial was absolutely fantastic to just go there off your own back and all that kind of thing. And that's what being a big club's all about, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And I would say the one thing he's probably learned about that is from playing in the Champions League and seeing how the likes of Barcelona and Man United took defeats and kind of conducted themselves. And I think that's kind of happened. I mean, certainly for next season, there's a lot of different things. I mean, there's currently a root and branch inquiry going on into the stewarding at Celtic Park, which I know for a fact Celtic have absolutely had enough of. Absolutely had enough of.
Has to be done.
And the straw that broke the camel's back was when the steward basically tried to attack the guy who was talking to the Liverpool fan at half-time when they were bringing a banner around.
Right.
Horrific stuff. And, they're piling up the complaints and so on and so forth. And I know there was a big hoo-ha at half-time after that. A new supporters charter's went in place. It kind of went under the radar, which basically says that every... so let's say you phone up the ticket office and say, I'm coming over next year, I want a ticket for Celtic against Motherwell. And for whatever reason, you didn't have a good experience. So the minute your phone goes down, you get an email saying, can you rate your experience? And then you say, well, no, it was shit, 1 star. You'll get a phone call within, I think, 4 hours for Celtic saying, I believe you had a... Again, that's a good thing, that, because what this does is it makes people accountable. Do you know what I mean? The people whoever, because there is absolutely... Listen, I know for a fact, I've heard top people at Celtic say that one of the biggest problems at Celtic amongst the staff in previous years was picking up the phone and saying, yeah, sorry, can I help you, churro? And that's it. And, so that's something. And now, clearly that's not all down to Peter Lawwell, but he's, allowing these kind of things to go on.
The culture starts at the top. That needs to be made a priority, and it needs to be communicated to everybody on down. And I completely agree that there is this impression that the club just don't give a shit, that they take the support for granted, and they're like, you're going to give us your money anyway, so fuck it. Yeah,
I mean, look, the feedback they've had from supporters over the last year when they've been talking to them is that the two biggest things that's pissing off supporters more than anything, three actually, is the general way that they're treated at games, whether it be through the offensive behaviour, if it were active shielding, whatever. The cronyism, i.e. that supporters think that certain supporters can do what they like and other ones are getting shafted all the time, and the fact that the club never properly reacted to the cheating.
Yep.
These are the things that hang me. Now, I know for a fact Peter Lawwell right now sitting in Belfast at a big do for the Aaron CSC over there. John Paul Taylor's there, the League Championship trophy's there, and then there's a Q&A tomorrow in Belfast and stuff like that. And they need to do more of that because that's a big event for supporters in Ireland and all that kind of thing. And that's the kind of things that they need to be embracing. And I believe that the trophy then goes to Liverpool tomorrow. These are the things that just make the supporters. One other thing I thought was fantastic, I mentioned before, was I think it was on your show, Graham, was that they brought in the oldest supporters to the last game of the season.
Yeah.
What they're going to do next season is when the players are not going to walk up the Celtic walkway every time, but the ones that maybe aren't in the squad or whatever will do, and will be there to sign autographs and photographs and things like that, and very much a kind of movie premiere thing, and that kids will be encouraged to come at a certain time to make sure they're in the optimum place to get that. Now, I think that's a fantastic thing. Do you know what I mean? I've seen the impact that a player interaction with a kid has on the kid. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, I remember, meeting people. I mean, Danny McGrain was my hero, and I remember meeting Danny for the first time in 1987 at a dance, and I was quivering with fear. Because the man was a god, and Danny being Danny was ripping the piss with me because that's what Danny kind of does. And it was him and Andy Walker, and Andy Walker was about 19-year-old at the time. It shows you that, and that was it. For me, Christ Almighty, I went into school on a Monday and I felt 10 foot tall.
Yeah,
that was Danny McGrain. You know what I mean? And that needs to happen more and more, because it shouldn't come down to the fact that, to meet a player for half an hour, you need to have a dance at Celtic Park. It's going to cost you 25 quid a head, and you have to do this. You've got shields up your arse telling you can't do this, you can't do that. You're paying overpriced fucking prices for shit selection of beer, and so on and so on and so on. That shouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And similarly, it shouldn't be who you know. Therefore, I know so-and-so, so he can get me in, or I can do this, or I can do that. Because that's just no good enough. Do you know what I mean? It's just no good enough, because it should be extended to every supporter. And I can guarantee you now that you will see massive changes next season in that respect. For example, if you were to come over, and say to Celtic, I'll guarantee you that somebody from Celtic Park would come out and meet you and speak to you now. Yep. Because this is an actual department of people. And
even if I have the flu?
Well, until they found out your name,
Well, no.
But I'll tell you something right now. It's like they completely certain people at that club understand the frustrations of supporters, because they're supporters themselves. You know what I mean? And they're kind of relaying this to Lawwell and Riley and all that. And now, of course, it can be like turning the Queen Mary at that club sometimes, and things like that. But it's got to be a process. You know what I mean? And people are saying, well, it's the staff's fault, it's the steward's fault, and that. Well, now the process has gone in there where it's like, well, if that's the case, now we can identify them and get them to fuck, basically. You know what I mean? Because, that's the kind of thing it is. Now, clearly, there's still some issues, and I think Peter Lawwell's been responsible for a lot of them kind of thing, and I'm certainly not going to be the one to defend him, because I do think that it's probably his time is up, and perhaps that he could maybe be getting a wee job with somewhere like UEFA or something like that, just watch this space and move on, that kind of thing.
Didn't see that coming.
But, I'd say big things are happening. But at the end of the day, our aim should be is very simple. Filling that stadium every week. You fill that stadium every week, and everything else will just fall into place.
I just want to talk politics with Brian Wilson.
Oh, I was in a good mood there, and now you're actually starting to thinking about the fact that my money helps pay the wages of a guy that abuses me online every single time that I mention I want to vote yes. And what would be in my interest to say to people at Celtic, could you explain to me why I'm paying this fucking idiot to go on junkets to Lisbon when every time he goes on Twitter he fucking drives me insane? But that's another story.
It's a good question. It remains to be said.
We're not a political club. So.
No, absolutely not. We're more than just a club. Or we're, what is it? What's the latest one? It wasn't more than
a club like no other.
A club like no other. That's right. Vote no. I mean, right. Did I hear you say that they were taking the league trophy to other places? Yeah. I mean, that's. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I guess the people in Ireland or Liverpool, they must spend a lot on the club because clearly here in America we don't spend enough on the club to have the trophy over here. But
well, you don't know. But
no,
no, that's right. It's in Belfast tonight, and it's going to Liverpool, I think, tomorrow.
Oh, lovely.
Tomorrow, or something like that. So yeah, it's it's little acorns. I mean, look, there's a million things you could say how it was bad and all that kind of thing, but you're all right because you've got Sefco to look forward to. Who are
that's right.
Holes of America and Canada, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah, they're playing the Wichita State Ramblers at the Nebraska County Fairgrounds. I think it's a 60-by-40 pitch though, so I don't know if it's going to be an official game. But
if they're staying in Wichita, I hope they're staying in that hotel that they were staying in planes, trains, and automobiles, like
right next door to the Kenosha Kickers.
Yeah, Alan McCoist and fucking Ian Durant. We're like. Is that 2 pillows? Those aren't 2 pillows. That'd be good,
This is interesting. Your stance toward Lawwell has softened dramatically.
No. It's not. I mean, look, listen. Peter Lawwell, I have any relationship whatsoever with Peter Lawwell, and I wouldn't expect him to be my biggest fan. I'm pretty sure that he isn't or anything like that. And, it was... I mentioned something to somebody a couple of weeks ago and said, Peter Lawwell should do this, and he just turned around and said, you've been caning him in public for 10 years, what the fuck are you expecting me to do for you? Which is a fair point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I did remind him I pay the cunt's wages, so fucking he should do everything I fucking say him. But nah. But what do you think? Give me your opinion.
Lawwell in general, I think that listen, I can't slag him for everything that he's ever possibly done, but I think that in the grand scale, I think there's far more negative than positive, and that's just my honest opinion. I think that the fracturing amongst the support and the disconnect between the support and the club, or the administration of the club, is really down to his poor leadership. That this is a culture that needs to be. It shouldn't even need to be projected, and the fact that it is what it is leads me to think that. It oozes out of him. I'll go back to my earlier point. Tommy Burns would not allow any of this. That's the type of ethos that needs to be permeated from the person at the top. Whoever is going to be in charge of Celtic Football Club needs to constantly ask themselves, what would Tommy Burns do? What would Tommy Burns do in any situation, and then do that? That's it. It's easy.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something. I hope you're not comparing Tommy Burns to Jesus, because Tommy Burns was bigger than Jesus. But let's just roll back 2 years, Graham. Let's talk about your meeting with Peter Lawwell.
Right.
What's happened since then?
Zero.
Why is that? Has that man been on the phone to you? What did he tell you?
No. I voiced my concerns, about what was going on in America, and he...
Well, wait, stop it now, sorry. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You didn't just voice your concerns. You said something to him about your hand. What was it?
About my hand?
Yeah, you said, here's your hand.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought this was like a Full Metal Jacket, this is my hand. There are many like it, but this one's mine. It's my hand.
I suggested you give him the hand.
My hand is nothing without... Okay. And it's exactly how I termed it. I said, this is my hand that I'm extending out to you, and I hope that you reach back and you grab it back, because there are loads of people here in America that are dying to support the club, that just want nothing more than to buy the merchandise, than to watch the games, and it's not easy. And you need to do things that are going to make it easier for us to give you our money. I said, it's kind of funny to be having a conversation with somebody saying, please take my money. This is like, my aunt's arguing over a bill, around the holidays. And he stood there and he had this really earnest look on his face, and he's nodding his head and yeah, these are good ideas. And I'm sharing, like, you could do this, you could do that. There's Notre Dame here. I mean, there's just so many marketing opportunities that can capitalize on the burgeoning and growing interest in the game here. When people are looking, I explained to them that people all over are getting into the game and they're looking for a club to support, and it's a glove in hand fit for so many people to come and watch Celtic or to support Celtic, and there's just absolutely no exposure. There's nothing. I gave him several ideas of how Celtic could do that. And he says, I'll have my people get in touch with you. Do you have a card? Do you have a business card? So I wrote my cell phone number down as well as my email address, and I gave it to him. I said, I hope to hear from you soon. I appreciate you coming over here to play in a friendly, and I hope it's not the last time. That was 2 years ago, and I haven't heard from him. Now, getting back to your point.
Meanwhile, that meeting was photographed for posterity, and you're talking to Lawwell, and Seamus Cummins has got a look on his face that just says, "We got a situation here."
The eagle has exploded the nest. We're gonna need backup.
Anyway. Let's wrap this. Is that the last topic?
That is the last topic. So thank you so much to yourself, Paul, for joining us.
When are we back?
We will be back next week with another episode. And to give another sort of explanation of the outline, there's going to be 10 shows. So over the next 10 weeks, we're going to have 10 shows. You can see the theme developing, 10 topics. We have 5 minutes to debate each topic. And at the end of it, you hear... So I'll give you another one here at the end of the show. But we had a lot of... requests, to come back and a lot of praise from last year's episode. So we certainly hope that, we can bring you something that's going to entertain you and help us sort of get carried over through, these barren weeks between the close of the season, through the World Cup, and then getting into the
Graham, as you well know, and everybody well knows, the only reason we're here is to protect the culture.
That's it. Fantastic stuff. Paul, thank you so much. And thank you to the listeners. Hail, hail, and keep the faith. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old past said. Boy, you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got trouble, and I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, see it through, 'cause you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Now, some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am, big and stronger too. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy, and as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.